Good day everyone. For this video lecture, we'll be talking about religious pluralism. So this lecture will be divided into three parts. The first one is we're going to be talking about the basic concepts of religion, the current state of religious diversity in the world, and we'll talk about religious pluralism, which is also very much tightly connected with multiculturalism. So let's look into the basic concepts first. So religion is a cultural system of commonly shared beliefs and rituals that provides a sense of ultimate meaning and purpose by creating an idea of reality that is sacred, all-encompassing, and supernatural. So what are some of the themes that are found in this definition? Is first, it's a cultural system. So religion in itself creates and is part of a culture. And as a culture, it has its shared beliefs and rituals being practices that have some sort of connection with the sacred, and basically provides ultimate meaning and purpose amongst the people who are practicing the said religion, and creates the idea that is different from the profane, which is sacred, all-encompassing, and in some religions or in most religions are supernatural. So the religion that has a god or believes in a god or multiple gods is called theism. So this is the belief in one or more supernatural deities. And of course, for those who believe in only one god, such as of course Catholicism or Islam or Judaism, we have monotheism. And of course, for those who believe in multiple gods, like for example in Hinduism, we have polytheism. And then we have also the idea of secularization, which is the dissociation of society from religious or spiritual concerns. So we see this in modern societies and in nation states that are democratic in nature. Like for example, in the Philippines, there's already an era of secularization, especially in the constitution we have separation of the church and state. So that specific provision is one example of the secularization of society. Okay, so now let's talk about the different types of religion that are found in society. We have first the churches, which are large bodies of people belonging to an established religious organization. So examples of major religions or churches in the Philippines, of course, we have Christianity or Catholicism, we have Islam. And then we have sects. Now, sects are religious movements that break away from the orthodoxy or the original root of the religion. Like for example, in the Philippines, a common sect under the Christian religion is, of course, we have the born-again Christians and those that are Christians that are away from Catholicism. And then we have denominations, which is a sect that has become an institutionalized body rather than just an activist protest group. Like for example, the Methodists and the Mormons that are previously connected with Christianity before, but they have grown in number so that they are not merely just a protesting sect from a major religion, but has become a denomination or a larger religious group in itself. Next, we have cults that are fragmentary religious groupings to which individuals are loosely affiliated but that lack any permanent structure. So mga kulto. So one common cult that is established in the Philippines is the Rizalist cult, which is numerous ethnic religious groups in the Philippines that believe in the divinity of Jose Rizal. And we also have other cults that are related to Rizalist cults like the Iglesia Sagrada ng Lahi or the Banner of the Race Church. What they do is they synthesize Roman Catholic rituals, images, and organization with traditional Filipino elements. Under 500,000 people, which are usually found in rural areas, that are found in these cults. These are cults because these are loosely organized and not really established or known as a religion by the state or the society. So they're considered cult. Of course, those who are inside the cults would feel like they're really within a legitimate religious group, but of course legitimacy of a religious group also has to have some sort of external recognition from the rest of the society, from the outgroups. And of course, from the crash course video that I also assigned to you in relation to religion, we talked about some classical theories of sociology on religion. The first one is, of course, Emil Durkheim, that basically argues that religion is a way for society to be able to separate the sacred and the profane. And then we also have Max Weber, that basically theorizes that religion is a way to be able to deal with or address the alienation that is found in society, and that the religion serve as the opium of the people, basically helps them in terms of coping with difficult crisis in life, but Weber also is the one who theorized that as the society becomes more modern, the thinking of people becomes more secular. The more that the societies move on to become nation states, and they become more secularized in thinking. And this is also what has happened in the Philippines. We used to be a very religious institution, but eventually we have verbalized in the Constitution that there should be a separation of the church and state. Of course, we still see a lot of policies that are being influenced by or encroached by the church in the Philippines. But when we compare it to hundreds of years ago, during the time of colonization, a lot of our laws were really based on the Bible and the morality of Christianity, which we do not see like 100% today. There's still traces of it, or large influences of it, but it's not as observable as it was in many years ago. There are also contemporary theories that look into religion, like we have religious economy, which is religions are organizations, and therefore they also compete with one another for followers. And when you see the Mormons, they go door to door, they knock on people's homes, and they actively recruit new members. You only have this number of population in the world, and the goal of most religions is really to evangelize, to spread the word. And of course, there are economic gains if you have a larger institution in a given nation state. Your bargaining power in terms of the policies and the programs are bigger when you have a larger group size in a society or in a nation state. That's why religions like to evangelize. And in relation to religious economy, we have religious nationalism, which is linking of strongly held religious convictions with beliefs about a people's social and political destiny. So, as also explained in the Crash Course video, religion was used to justify the slave trade and the racism in the United States. In the Philippines, we use religion in order for us to disenfranchise certain sexual and gender identities. And also, religion has been used by some people in order for them to get political power. Like, for example, we have large people in this certain organizations who are now in Senate seats, in Congress, and in other positions in the local government unit. We have religious leaders that are found in the party list representatives, and then of course we have large religions who really sway the voting public, like for example the Iglesia ni Cristo, which is one of the more successful denominations in the Philippines. They're able to sway the people in terms of voting, so their political will is very strong in the Philippines. And also, as seen in this picture, the evangelicals in the United States had a very, very strong influence on the reason why President Trump is the president, has been the president in the last 4 years, which hopefully would end soon. So now let's talk about religious diversity, and let's talk about the state of religions in the world. So 84% of the global population identifies with a religious group. And in 2015, 1.2 billion people in the world, or 16%, said that they have no religious affiliation at all. So they're either atheists who do not believe in an existence of a God, or agnostic, someone who believes in the supernatural, a deity, but not necessarily a deity that is prescribed by a certain religious affiliation. In the West, religion is on the wane, especially in Western Europe and North America, and it's growing everywhere else. Even Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world, more than twice as fast as the overall global population. And it is expected to rise more in the many years to come. So in the Pew Research Center research on the distribution of religions around the world, Christianity was seen to be the largest group in 2015, and followed by Muslims, and then followed by Hindus, and others are unaffiliated, and others are Buddhists. A small percentage are Jews, and then we have other religions, and we have folk religions that are related to less modernized cultural groups. So we have 2.3 billion Christians, 1.8 billion Muslims, and this is the distribution of the other major religions in the world. So as you can see, at the global distribution of religions in the world, you would see that there's a lot of our religion that is founded from Christianity, from its root, Catholicism, to the different denominations that came out of it. And of course, you see in the Philippines, we are predominantly a Catholic country. And of course, if we are really more specific on this, the one who's in Mindanao is on the Islam. It's a more Muslim community in Mindanao. In this chart, we are also able to glean the distribution per religion in terms of their members who are living as a majority group or a minority group. So let's just look at the Christians muna. For example, 87% of the Christians live as a majority in a given society, and 13% of them live as a minority. So for example, I would imagine that the Christians in the Middle East are considered as a minority, so they don't have as much political or bargaining power in those societies. And of course, one very bad example of how Christians are minoritized are those that are found in China. And the same thing for the Muslims. 27% of the Muslims live as minorities in a given society. So we have the Rohingya Muslims, we have the Uyghur Muslims in China who are also being displaced, and are being disempowered in their given societies or their given countries. So this is basically how the different religions are distributed in terms of whether they are in part of the majority or minority in a given society. And as we explained earlier, religion in itself is a cultural identity. It has its own shared beliefs, it has its own shared values, it has its symbols or totems, and there are ways of life that are attached to religions. And of course, just like when we talk about cultural and ethnic diversity, there's also religious diversity. And what is expected when you have a diverse society with people practicing different religions, you also expect certain conflicts, such as how you would expect people from different cultures living in a given location would also experience some sort of friction or conflict unless there are some things to address them. So some of the more known conflicts that are found because of religion is, one, we have the Islamic extremists waging war in the Middle East, a power struggle between the Sunni Islam people and the Shia Islam people across the region. The Sunni and the Shia fighting for their legitimacy in a given society. So I will not be delving into the specific story of the Sunni and Shia because it's very webbed and very layered. I'll be providing videos on the background on some the stories that basically where the wars that we see in the Middle East are founded upon. And then we also have the persecution of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, being displaced, being killed, being disempowered, their resources are taken away from them. So this is also very much religiously charged. And then we also have the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria. So this began in 2009 when the jihadist group Boko Haram started an armed rebellion against the government of Nigeria. The conflict takes place within the context of long-standing issues of religious violence between Nigeria's Muslim and Christian communities, and the insurgents' ultimate aim is to establish an Islamic state in the region. And usually, for most of the religious conflicts that we are seeing, the one of the main aims really is to make religious nationalism a thing again, moving away from secularism to a more religious nationalist state. And then we also have the violent clashes between the Christians and Muslims in Central African Republic, wherein the former Seleka coalition of rebel groups, who are mainly from the Muslim minority, and the mainly Chinese anti-Balaka coalition had a conflict, and it was part of the ongoing Central African Republic civil war, which has started in 2012 and is still going on in the present. And in the Philippines, we have our own religious conflicts, which is the Moro insurgency in Mindanao, which started in 1969, and we still have experiences of it now. And then we also have the religious conflict in Mindanao, the Moro insurgency in Mindanao, and of course we have a lot of groups that are involved with this. We have the Moro National Liberation Front, and it's splintered into multiple groups like the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and basically their goal is to be able to establish an independent Islamic state within the Philippines, and very much a reaction to a resistance to foreign rule, and even the American colonization, and of course the Jabida massacre in 1968, wherein 60 Filipino Muslim commandos were placed on a planned operation to reclaim the eastern part of the Malaysian state of Sabah, and they were killed there. So yun yung pagbuo ng MNLF is one of their reactions to that specific mission that of course failed. And in relation to gender and sexuality and soji, religion has been used as a rationalizer and as a justifier for subjugating women in society, for persecuting LGBT people, for not giving them equal rights in society, naming LGBTQIA people as blasphemists. They're being tortured or murdered in the name of religion. It also happens in the Philippines, and it happens elsewhere. And of course, as I explained earlier, religion remains to be, or even also has increasing influence now. Despite modernization of the world, it has increasing influence now in terms of the way politics are happening. Like for example, evangelicals being one of the important influencers why Donald Trump has been president. And again, it all springs from having a world or having a society with different religious backgrounds, religious diversity. Diversity of opinion is nowhere more evident than in the area of religious thought. On almost every religious issue, honest, knowledgeable people hold significantly diverse and often incompatible beliefs, and therefore conflict or potential conflict can happen. One way that religious diversity could be managed could be through interfaith dialogue, like what we see in this picture, the Pope talking to other religious leaders of other religions. and settling with the idea of, or the philosophy of, religious pluralism, which is very much related to multiculturalism. So religious pluralism is characterized by humility regarding the level of truth and effectiveness of one's own religion. So it takes that. You have to be humble that your religion is not the superior of all religions in order for religious pluralism to happen. The aim is to have respectful dialogue and mutual understanding with other religious traditions, as a form of respect, as a form of coexistence with each other, especially if the coexistence will not put people in danger. Now, aside from religious pluralism, there are other responses to religious diversity, like the multicultural responses that I explained in the previous lectures. There are also different responses of majority groups on religious minority. The first one is exclusivist. Exclusivist religious diversity is wherein only one set of belief, claims, or practices can ultimately be true or correct. So this is true among nation states wherein their national framework is really much based on religious texts. Like for example, in the Middle East. And then of course we have the pluralist, wherein more than one set of beliefs or practices can be at least partially or perhaps wholly true or correct simultaneously. Like for example, the belief that there is a God for polytheistic religions. This is something that we can probably agree on. Or for example, to live a peaceful, to live a generous life, to look after each other, to love our neighbors. These are some beliefs and some practices that religions can agree upon, and instead of looking for differences, we look at this the similarities while maintaining our own religious identities from the religious group that we belong to. And then we have inclusivists, so possibly that more than one religious tradition can contain elements that are true or efficacious, while at the same time hold that only one tradition expresses ultimately religious truth most completely. So for example, this is for example sa Pilipinas, while we respect Islam, we respect other denominations like INC, but seemingly the stance of the majority in the Philippines is that we still believe that Christianity's moral framework should be the one that influences our laws and ways of the land. So, inclusivist siya. So, parang nasa gitna siya ng exclusivist at saka ng pluralism. So, nasa gitna nila yung inclusivist. Kasi yung pluralism, I don't require, I will allow you to practice your religious identity, and I respect your religious identity, and I accept your religious identity and practices, and I will do mine. There are commonalities in how we practice things, but you don't really have there's really shouldn't be like a main religion governing the whole of society. But for inclusivists, I respect you, I respect your religious identity, but still, in the majority, religions should still be one of the bigger rationalizers of why we do things in society. So yon. Another philosophy that is a response to religious diversity is relativism. The truth of beliefs or the efficacy of practices are wholly dependent on the perspective of the religious individual and her cultural environment. Like for example, there are those religions that are folk religions that are very much related to their land, and we respect that because that's the way of life that they've had for a long period of time. They are indigenous peoples, and they have their own specific practices, and that religion has been developed because of a specific cultural environment. So parang ganon. And then we have strong anti-realism, which says that there is no positive religious beliefs that are true in any sense, even the relativist ones, and no religious practices are efficacious. So this is like, no religion is good enough. There should be no religion. Religion shouldn't exist at all. So, and this is one of course, the rationalizer or justifiers of those who subscribe to atheism. And feminism kind of supports religious pluralism because in terms of gender equality, we have seen how religion has been a justifier for gender inequality and oppression for women. So, special attention needs to be paid not only to the experiences of people with diverse genders, but also ethnic, national, economic identities as they intersect with religions. Because of course, those usually we see that those coming from religious minorities are usually also economically disadvantaged. Like for example, there are certain institutions that may not hire Muslim people, especially when they are the minority in that group, because for example, the Muslim people, for example, would request extra breaks, and for those who are not Muslims and do not understand the need for breaks for prayer that are required for those who are practicing Islam, may find that unfavorable for their job, and therefore could be the cause why they don't want to employ that person. So it could be, for example, of course, a Catholic university may refuse to employ someone who comes from a different religion. So mga ganon, so we're also looking at, if you are a religious minority, most likely other forms of oppression also are experienced by you. But also particularly to those whose experiences have been traditionally ignored or underrepresented with Western philosophical and theological tradition. So yun nga, when the colonization, the European imperialism happened in the medieval times, talagang ini-spread out nila yung Catholicism, yung Christianity all over the world. We really see how the people whose beliefs are not aligned with that, they are minoritized in society. We don't see their experiences in textbooks. We only get to learn about the religions that are majority in our country or in our state. It is central also to find alternative scriptural resources or minority practices that can be used to critique, augment, or replace traditions that have historically excluded or undervalued women. Like for example, there's a huge masculine bias in Christianity. Like for example, diba, the pronouncements na babae magpaka-ilalim ka sa iyong asawa, or how females are usually imagined as the more submissive ones. They shouldn't be talking over men, and that they're the cause of the sin, of the original sin, as because Eve ate the apple, and that Eve came from the ribs of Adam. Or most gods in religions are male in nature, so there's that masculine bias. There's underrepresentation of stories of women in the Bible, and usually our heroes in the Bible are males. So because of that, nagagamit yung mga scriptures na ito, yung mga storya na ito from these holy texts to justify the oppression being experienced by women today. So in this video, we talked about religious pluralism, we talked about the basic concepts of religion, we talked about religious diversity at the current time, and we also talked about religious pluralism, the different responses of societies in relation to religious diversity.